But I was very fortunate. I sold my first book really 1 year after that. So it wasn't very long of that. And then, by the way, I wasn't successful. So I sold books, but I was vastly overpaid, but nobody read the books. So what I did very smartly was get myself hugely into debt. I ended up spending a few years. My parents hate when I tell these stories, but in my 20s, I racked up almost $2 million in debt, which is actually quite impressive. And I had an IRS agent who knew me by name who would go up and say, "You have to pay something." I had all of my accounts frozen, but there was one where I could still get money out of it. I was living sneaking out the window kind of thing. I had $78,000 in credit card debt, and I would use those checks from the credit card companies to pay my rent. It was the dumbest thing in the world. You should never do that. And so literally when I sold Bringing Down the House, I was in a mountain of debt, to the point where I had a stack of business school applications, and I was like, I'm going to have to go to business school because the only way I could ever pay my way out of this is go work on Wall Street. And, I'd gone to Harvard, so it wasn't like I wasn't going to be able to get a real job. But I knew I was on the verge of, and this was after I published 6 books. So this was pre-Bringing Down the House. I was kind of an it boy author, so they were paying me a lot for the books, but I was spending even more than they were paying me. So
what were you buying? How do you get in $2 million debt?
It's incredible.
That is incredible. So I was in like $40,000 to $50,000, $60,000 debt, and I was making movies, and it was nuts.
Yeah.
No, 2 million. I'm just like, it really is actually impressive. It is actually something kind of to be proud of.
The amount of money the way I spent money was insane. I would go to the airport on a Wednesday, the Logan Airport, no bags, nothing. I'd show up at the airport and I'd buy a one-way ticket to like Paris or London or anywhere. And I would fly one way and I would go to the nicest hotel and book like the nicest suite, and then call all the friends that I had and say, "Come, we're going to have fun." And we'd spend 2 weeks in wherever we were. We were at the top floor of the, what was the Renaissance Hotel in Amsterdam for like 3 weeks. Then I'd go to the Park Plaza in New York for a month. I went to LA when the Standard and LA opened in West Hollywood. I lived in their pool suite for a month and a half for no reason at all. And literally, and by the way, I didn't do drugs. And no, I was a little bit of a drunk, but not beyond, what everyone is. I was a bit of a drunk, but I wasn't no drugs, nothing like that. And yet I would just spend and spend. And it was just fun. And it was kind of like, when someone has like a professional athlete career and they think, okay, it's going to keep happening, I'll just keep getting big checks.
Right.
And literally I was spending way more than I was taking in. And it wasn't until like the end of this year period where I was like, oh crap, I need to. But I always thought, I could just sell another book. But the reality is nobody was reading my books, so there was going to come an end point to that ability to sell a book. And then I ran into the MIT kids, and I started going to Vegas with them, and I was like, oh, this is a really cool story. It just happens to be true.